Okay, hello again, everyone. Welcome to Father-Daughter. I'm Larry Gordon with Malky Gordon-Hirsch.
Hi.
And this is our regular weekly series of an unscripted and unprepared, totally unprepared conversation about life between a father and a daughter. I think you know that because you've probably seen a couple of our episodes already. And we are definitely trying not to prepare anything for these things so that they are, as I've said a number of times over the weeks, absolutely and completely spontaneous. But I did say to Malka the other day, let's do a segment on the books we're reading. And I had to say that, even though I didn't want to say it, because, I mean, how much can you do from memory about what you're reading? So, as you could see, we both brought stuff in that we
Show
read.
and tell.
Now, I know you read a lot of books.
I do.
I don't read a lot of books.
Why is that?
Because I could really only read on Shabbos.
Because usually you're watching Fox News?
No, I could read while I'm watching Fox News.
Really?
Fox News is just for one part of my brain. I could do other stuff at the same time. As a matter of fact, I like watching things on my iPad while Fox News is on. I know what's going to happen on Fox News by heart. You know?
How do you know that?
If you don't, you know what? I know we only have a half hour, but let me tell you. I know in our last episode we talked about my father as a Yiddish journalist, and I don't want to insult anybody, but I remember, I'm not going to say where we used to go, but as a family we used to go to these Jewish organizational conventions. That usually took place over Thanksgiving weekend. And I remember one year in particular, I was a teenager, and we had to go, I think we were going someplace in New Jersey for Thanksgiving weekend for a convention of a rabbinical organization. Let me call it that, because there's a lot of them, so you won't know who it is. And we're waiting around for my father. It's a Thursday. It was probably Thanksgiving. We wanted to make it there on time for turkey dinner. And my father has this office in the basement, and he's not coming up, and we want to go already. And we're calling him, Dad, come on, let's go. We want to go. We want to get going. We want to get to the hotel. And finally he comes up, and I remember saying to him, what took so long? And he said to me that he was just finishing writing what takes place over the weekend, because the same thing happens every year by these conventions. He didn't want to have the pressure.
He was writing it beforehand?
Yeah, he was writing it beforehand.
That's great.
Because he knew. So what reminded me of that is what you said about Fox News. I mean, it's funny how you can watch it, because there really is the same stuff happening over and over and over again. But there's something, I don't know, compelling or addictive or a combination of the two,
right,
that makes you just keep watching it, Someone told me yesterday, we were playing yesterday with the word Biden, or actually on Shabbos, right? On camp with his slogan. I showed it to you, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't even bring it up here, but it was forbidden for Biden.
For Biden.
A play on words. And someone sent me a thing yesterday on one of the WhatsApp groups, said there was a truck going around a Democratic convention which took place in August, and it said BIDEN, biggest idiot Democrats ever nominated. Anyway,
that's a lot of fun.
Yes. Anyway, it's possible there's so much going on in electronic media that it's hard to sit down with a book. First of all,
so you save it usually for Shabbos,
and I read the newspapers.
Right,
so
right.
I read the Wall Street Journal.
Because you always tell me, you're always filling me in on the news that I need to know, because I don't get newspapers to my house because of the covers.
Actually, we're sitting here now. This is the end of August, and we're sitting here now, and I am finally transitioning from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends gave the New York Times 10 years ago, but I couldn't give it up. I think maybe I was addicted to that blue plastic thing in the driveway every morning. Mm-hmm. It's like a reaffirmation that the sun has risen. The sun has come up.
I remember when you used to come in, for Shabbos right after Moshe passed, and you'd be like, "Oh my God, I forgot my weekend subscription."
I know,
and I didn't get it.
I know you don't get the paper.
So
there's something about that blue plastic bag that has the Times in it that, I don't know, I've been getting it for so many years, I didn't want to give it up.
It's like your morning coffee.
And the Wall Street Journal uses like a clear white plastic.
Not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. They should come up with they should do a different
color.
The Post does orange, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's red. Looks orange to me. Red orange. Okay. And I think Newsday has yellow. Anyway, the Wall Street Journal has no color. Anyway.
So you don't get a lot of reading in during the week because of all of the.
I have no time for fiction during the week.
Right.
It's too much.
You don't have to read fiction though.
But I like reading fiction, and also there's do the dafyomi every day.
Okay.
Which is time consuming.
Okay.
We're learning it's also a big time commitment. Some days easier than others. Now we're learning about Erevin, about how to construct an Erev
right.
and the nuances. It involves a lot of math and has a lot of charts. The second I see a chart, I say, "Oh my God, this is not for me." It reminds me of high school, but I try. I just skip over the charts. Anyway, and so I also read a great deal. It was one of my favorite go-to books. This is he just passed away 2 weeks ago. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. His commentary on the Chumash, tremendous insight, and it deserves to be read very slowly to absorb everything he says. As you can see, it's pretty well worn. This book.
So you've had that for a while, and
I have it a long
you
time.
reread it.
I reread it every week.
Really?
Every week, not
Wow.
the entire book. Every
Different parts.
parsha, different parsha. Everything
Right.
is separate, and
Right.
he has great insights. Rabbi Steinsaltz.
Okay. What's the next book?
Back to the Wall Street Journal. By the way, I have it online too. I can read it online.
Right.
But there's something about a cup of coffee and a newspaper.
I could get my books on a Kindle if I wanted. I can get audiobooks if I wanted.
But you couldn't read them. You couldn't read them on Shabbos then.
Yes, but I don't know. There's something about a book.
Okay, you want to see the rest of my books that
Go
I'm in the
ahead.
middle of reading now?
Sure.
I don't have to even stop at the end of a chapter. I could stop in the middle of a hyphenated word on Shabbos and pick up from the next Shabbos from the continuation
I do
of the
not
same
remember.
word, and I remember it.
I do not remember.
I even read newspapers that way.
No.
I found over the years that when you're, especially in the New York Times, because New York Times has more stories on the front page. Continued on page 13. I don't want to turn to page 13. I go to the next story,
Yeah.
and I read. So continue on page 23. 23.
You're middle of reading
then I go
two
to
different
13.
stories.
Then I go to 13. I finish that story. And after 13, I go to 23, and I finish that story.
Oh my God!
I
Do
don't
you know
know
how much I
That's
have
the way
to
to
start
read.
from? I have to start from like the beginning of like chapters when I am in the middle of a book that I have to. Reading in my house is a challenge because
It's noisy.
It's noisy. There's little kids and they want things. They want to eat. They want you to prepare things. So I could be reading and then sort of just be taken away from that for a while.
When you
Sometimes
say
I'll
a
put it
while,
down.
what do you mean?
A week.
Days? Oh, really?
For sure.
You could go a whole week without reading anything?
I read, but I don't read books.
So what do you read?
I read
Magazines?
Online.
Magazines and stuff?
Yeah. Things
Right.
that don't require a lot of concentration.
So what are these?
Okay, so these are my some of my favorites and some books that I'm in the middle of reading right now. This is a favorite that I read a few months ago, and it's from Elizabeth Gilbert.
Hold it up to the camera. Big
Magic.
Big Magic.
Big Magic.
Okay.
Creative Living Beyond Fear. Elizabeth Gilbert is the author of Eat, Pray, Love, which was her most popular book. And
Is she an actress?
Elizabeth Gilbert?
No?
No, she's a writer.
Okay.
She's an author.
All right. Go ahead.
She's written several books, a lot of books, and she's also a favorite TED Talker. Do you know what TED Talks are?
Yes, I do.
So I love TED Talks. I
Okay.
watch those a lot during the
Yes.
week too. Elizabeth Gilbert speaks about her her hesitation of writing anything as a follow-up to Eat, Pray, Love. Because Eat, Pray, Love was so much bigger than she ever anticipated it being. She knew that
What was
there
that about? What was it about?
Eat, Pray, Love was about her traveling to 3 different countries, trying to find meaning in her life. She went to Italy, India, and one other country, and it was like a reawakening. It was a spiritual reawakening for her in a lot of different ways, and it was what she needed. I think she had maybe been going through a divorce, or I forget exactly like the details surrounding why she started traveling, but the book was so well received by millions of people and also became a movie which starred Julia Roberts, which means it's pretty major.
And what's this one about?
So this is actually not a book about, it's not a novel. It's about living your life without fearing that your next book or whatever you follow up doing is not going to be as big as the thing before it. There are people, there are authors that she talks about. I forgot which author it was that wrote one book, and it was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, maybe? Who wrote that?
You know who wrote that? No? You want to Google that? Why don't you Google it?
It was an author that wrote a book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
It'll come to me. And it was a movie also.
Yeah, and it was so big that it prevented him from ever doing a follow-up for fear.
Who?
That wasn't the
No,
book.
that wasn't it. For fear that it would never be as well received to people. How do you live your life like that? Caring about what other people think. Have you ever done anything in your life?
So how do you relate to that?
How do I relate to it? It's just inspiration for me. Like reading something like this to see that like maybe she didn't care as much about what people thought, and she just decided to feed her creative.
So do you think
creativity.
So you think that everything a person does has to be followed up by something greater than what they did previously?
Of course not. That's exactly the point of this.
Oh, I didn't even read it.
It doesn't have to be.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't have to
Harper
be.
Lee. That's it. Harper Lee.
It shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to live under that kind of stress and pressure.
Of course not, but people do.
Of course,
I think it's
unless
human
you're publishing
nature.
a newspaper, then each issue has to be.
I'm sure there are times you've published a story that had a tremendous fallout, a tremendous criticism from other people, and you think to yourself, how am I going to, get myself out of this mess, or how am I going to do a follow-up that could redeem me in some way? I'm sure there have been times in your professional career that's
a subject for another segment about what gets attention in a newspaper, and when you're dealing with Orthodox Jews and Torah Jews and people that live on a certain high level, how you have to stay away from the stuff that other media uses to draw attention.
Okay.
So that's very challenging in and of itself. But there are places that you can go and subject matter that you can address that gets an inordinate amount of attention from people. But we really don't need that because Jewish life is so vibrant and so constantly changing that just delivering the stuff that's the fabric of our regular communal life is really enough.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent. We're talking
this
about
book
books.
has a lot more. It's just full. It really does. It's magical. It's magical.
So, I mean, do you think that you think it's human nature to whatever a person does, the next thing they do has to be greater than the thing they did previously?
It doesn't have to be, but a lot of people
is that human nature?
Yes, I think it's human nature to always, or maybe it's a personality thing, to just always challenge yourself or
like it
be
says in
better.
Tehillim, you should go mechoil el choil, from strength to greater strength.
Exactly. I think I believe it's human nature to want to do better, to challenge. I mean, the things that I do, the way I run my Instagram page, and I find myself sometimes in a rut because I want to create new content all the time, but I find myself doing these cookie cakes every single week.
It's getting boring.
Several times a week. It's been boring for a year.
Yeah, but what is a person that goes to work as an attorney or an accountant or
but I still create it, and I still love them when I finish.
They
but
look great.
they
look great.
They do look great. But I think to myself, I don't want to be pegged as a one-trick pony or somebody that can't do more. But I don't have time to do more because I have people ask me to do this stuff all the time, and I think to myself, I want to do this for them because it's meaningful for them, and I want to be that for somebody. I want to make them happy.
Take someone like the actor Jason Alexander, who played
Seinfeld.
What did he play? George Costanza on Seinfeld. He could never get another successul role. He did George well.
There were other cast members in Seinfeld that were able to do that. Julia Louis-Dreyfus,
right. But he was
reinvented herself several times.
He was such a good George that he's been in other films, I think.
He has been in other films. He's been in some funny movies.
But it hasn't been the same.
No.
Yeah, of course, every time you see him, he's George.
Right.
So he can't get past that.
I'm sure there's a lot of actors like that can never get past that role, and they probably fight their entire professional career following that one role that defined them for life and they're unable to like
So
get out of that.
let me tell you something else that I've been reading. And I
Okay.
get some of these books I have no idea exist. I get them in the mail from publishing companies.
That's
It's
fun. That's a great perk.
Yeah, and I didn't know they exist previously. And most of them, I don't know. Most of them, I don't. Do I give them away? I don't open them. I don't have time for
Okay.
them. But I don't know about this one. But I started reading this one over Yom Tov. Actually, it was last summer in Israel. It's called "The Art of Inventing Hope: An Intimate Conversation with Elie Wiesel" by Chicago-based journalist Howard Reich. And he says things in here that just was so striking. That I when we get on the subject of Holocaust survivors and living in that environment, I can't get past what Elie Wiesel said. See, Elie Wiesel was coming to Chicago and he was going to speak, and Howard Reich was a journalist with the Chicago newspaper, and he was going to interview him. So he met with him to prepare for the program, and that's the basis of this book. But interestingly, with the observation that Wiesel makes in this book that is so startling is that the trauma that was of surviving the Holocaust was so intense that it trickled down to subsequent generations. And
Of
he
course.
says the following. He says, children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors suffer from a trauma they never experienced.
Right.
Where else in the world can you have a reaction to something you never experienced?
Right.
You experienced it, so you're going to react to it.
Mhm.
But here you didn't experience it. And not in this book, but other writers in Israel especially have recently said that the trauma of the Holocaust was so extreme that it impacted on people's genetics, on their DNA, and it's passed down genetically from generation to generation. So
That's
it's not
something that scientists have studied.
It's some scientists have studied.
Wow.
I mean, there's some that say it's possible. Some they say it's impossible. But you can't imagine the extent of the even calling it trauma is the best word that comes to mind. But it's an understatement.
Right.
When you know what those survivors had to endure.
This actually sounds very similar to Man's Search for Meaning.
Very much so. It could be
Frankl.
that it was
Inspired by
inspired by that.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, what year was that written in?
Viktor Frankl. I don't know
Earlier,
what the...
no?
Yeah.
Pre-Holocaust, no?
I think he might have started it before. I don't remember the timeline, but he...
But of course, Elie Wiesel was the consummate representative of 46.
so
He
it was
wrote
the-
it, so it was post-Holocaust.
Right.
So it's the same catalyst conceivably, but and here I'll tell you that you were talking about the radio in one of our previous segments actually.
We have 3 whopping segments
Yeah.
under our belt.
Yes. And I remember in the 1970s on the radio, I would be interviewing Holocaust survivors. And I was 22 years old, and these people came in, and people that I knew brought them in because they wanted to do during Holocaust Remembrance Day, they wanted to do certain shows on that subject. And I think to myself, gee, this happened 30 years ago. What are they bothering with this now,
Yeah, it's already passed. Let's
and
move
now
on.
and now here we are,
70 years.
70 years later, and it seems that to me anyway, the relevance and the impact is even greater than it was 30 years
Why do
after
you think
the
that
events
is?
of the Holocaust. I don't know. It's not something that dissipates, or it's also it's testimony to the extent of the, here we go again, of the trauma.
Right.
I don't know if there's a better word than trauma, but it's the extent of it that it doesn't dissipate. It doesn't go away, even though that generation is, slowly but surely disappearing. I think the fact that the trauma lives in their children and in their grandchildren, and maybe someday in their great-grandchildren. We don't
Right,
know.
right.
But it could be there's something to the idea that it is passed down genetically.
Wow.
What else you got there?
I've got Option P, which is a book that was given to me a few times
Yeah.
as I was sitting Shiva.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Sheryl Sandberg. She is the CEO of Facebook,
Right.
along with Mark Zuckerberg. And it was about her her experience becoming a widow very suddenly. She was in Mexico with her husband for a friend's 50th birthday, and he had told her he was going to the gym to work out. And when they all got together for dinner that night, he had still not resurfaced from the gym, and she found him. And he had some type of cardiac issue and died. She had to come back from vacation and tell her kids, and it really resonated with me because I find, and I don't know if I'm alone in this, I don't think I am, but I find that when people go through loss and something very sudden, they call it, or there's an author that calls it an out of order death, an out of order loss, because it is not the natural order of life for a 40-year-old man who's never had any medical issues to die at work. When that happens and somebody writes about it, people that have suffered a similar loss sort of latch on to that person and their story to give them reassurance that one day maybe things will be okay. And this is her.
So how long ago? What year did that occur in Sheryl Sandberg?
Years I think it was
some years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, about 5 to 7 years ago.
Within the 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So you identified with her experience?
Very much so.
And
she brings down just things, different pointers. She wrote it with her friend Adam Grant, who's a doctor, and just different ways that she found her the best way of healing for herself and her family, and it was very helpful to me. And I just love the book. I think it's great.
Have you always liked reading?
I was such
always?
a big always.
Even in school?
Depending on what they told me to read, but
I mean, you read the stuff I told you not to read.
Maybe.
But the stuff you're supposed to read, you didn't read.
Oh, is that your experience with being my parent?
No,
I don't think you were around really. I don't know. Remind me.
I have no recollection of.
No, you do not.
Of that experience.
I did. I read John Steinbeck. I read the books that I was supposed to read.
All right, good. I read books I was supposed to read too when I was in school. But I'll tell you that. I can admit it now. Emma's not going to like it so much, but I used to, when I was a senior in high school, I just I had enough. I used to cut out half the day.
Okay.
But where would I go? Where does a 17 or 18-year-old kid goes? You know where I used to go?
Library?
Library.
Oh, my God, that's so nerdy.
I used to go to the library.
Well, what else were you going to do in 1960-something?
No, it was 1972, 71,
I'm
72.
sorry, I'm aging you.
I went to a library. I used to go far away to a library because I didn't want to see anybody that I knew.
Right.
That would have to go back to
tattle
school.
They would tattle on you and say,
so I remember
we saw Levy in the library.
My high school was on Coney Island Avenue, and I went to the library on Fort Hamilton Parkway, 62nd.
You just took the bus?
Is it 62nd? Yeah, I took the bus. I think I walked.
I don't know.
I think I took the bus. I had a bus pass. Why not?
How much was the bus pass in those days?
I don't know. You got it for free if you were in school.
Was that so?
And I remember I started reading. Just to pass the time, Ernest Hemingway.
Oh wow!
And at the same time, Kurt Vonnegut.
I don't know who Kurt Vonnegut is.
Kurt Vonnegut is a great author. He wrote Breakfast of Champions. He has got some great stuff. He passed away a few years ago. And Ernest Hemingway committed suicide, like in the 40s, I think.
Okay.
They say he was cleaning his rifle with his tongue, but
that must have been it.
Yeah. Also, but I really liked. I also was a fan of Philip Roth.
Oh, Philip Roth.
His writing was amazing.
Oh.
But so you know what? Interesting that you mentioned Philip Roth. Ernest Hemingway wrote. What intrigued me about was even though I didn't know anything about writing at the time, I was in high school. He expressed some very profound ideas in the most simplest sentences. And Kurt Vonnegut did very much the same thing.
I love that style of writing.
Short, simple sentences. And I said to myself, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. And then Philip Roth has sentences that are a paragraph long, which you would say in our English teachers in high school say it's a run-on sentence, Mr. Gordon.
Yeah.
But you know what? Philip Roth's sentences are 5-6 lines long, and they're perfect.
Do you ever go to an art museum and see something that looks like something that your 5-year-old could draw, and you'd be like, what?
Yeah,
That's Picasso?
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's
yeah.
Picasso?
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's
Same kind of thing. It's like it's the way they're able to construct a sentence that uses the words that you use every day.
That's right.
But it's the order of the way they do it that makes it magical. And you think to yourself, that is something I could do.
But it's also because it is Ernest Hemingway,
Right.
And it is Kurt Vonnegut that they
Right.
could do that. I don't know what their first writing or their early writing was really
Right.
like.
Right.
It may have been that way, and like I said on another subject, it may have been in an uncluttered field where you're able to express yourself in simpler terms. But I think the expressing yourself in a simple way without showing off what kind of big words you could use,
Yeah.
and you could string them together,
Right.
resonates with people more than sitting and writing with a thesaurus
Yeah.
next to you.
Right.
But
It's approachable, and it's for everybody that understands.
I mean, I read things. I read things on Shabbos, and when you can't write anything down, I say to myself, "That's a great word. I got to find a place to use that word." But
Really?
then, it gets dark outside, and I forget the whole thing.
Right.
Until the next
Right.
time I see
Yeah.
next time I see the word. But language is an extraordinary. It's a great thing.
It's beautiful.
It's a great thing. So let me just tell you, we only have a few minutes left. So I just picked up a new book. I don't know when people are going to see this, but I'm in the middle of reading it. See, that's where I'm up to.
Okay.
And it's like, it's 2 weeks now? It's called The Escape Artist
Okay.
by Helen Fremont. It also has a similar Holocaust type of theme. 2 girls, 2 sisters raised in a family of survivors from Poland. Actually, they were raised Catholic, and they didn't realize they were Jewish until they became adults.
Wow.
That's really that's a side story to the whole thing. It's really about the dynamics of growing up in that kind of an environment. And I have as time goes on and I read these books, I have an appreciation for the experience of being brought up in a family, like your mother, like Ima,
Right.
whose parents were sole survivors of the Holocaust, and you hear that from time to time. And it's really, as much, all the times that you hear it, it's always incomprehensible.
Right.
When you meet someone
That's lived through it.
that that had 10 siblings and parents and uncles and aunts, and they came to this country after the war with nobody. It's staggering, and it's incomprehensible, and it still is today. My point that I was trying to make before is that it doesn't get depleted, it doesn't diminish, it doesn't lessen. It's always powerful. And that's why, first of all, you find these themes in a lot of books, even books that you'll pick up randomly.
Right.
I don't know why I picked this book up. I didn't even know it was about that, to tell you the truth. Why did I pick up The Escape Artist? I don't know. You told me to pick it up. Did you know it was about that? You didn't know it was about that. Yeah? Well, you read reviews of books. But I don't read the reviews, but it's a nationally best-selling
That also
author.
helps when you
Yeah.
read a New York Times bestseller or whatever bestseller, national bestseller.
Yeah, everybody's a best-selling author.
Is that so?
These days.
Did you ever want to write a book?
Yeah, I have a couple of books started in my
In your head?
computer.
On your computer?
In my computer.
Oh, wow.
But I'm busy with everyday stuff. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll be able to sit down, relax, and
I'm sure people have mentioned it to you
finish it.
several times.
Listen, I have thousands.
You should write a book.
I have thousands of articles. People in my kind of business, they take all their articles and they stuff it into a book, and they put out a book like this, and it's all it has are their articles, which I find very disappointing, because if a guy's a good writer, then you read his articles already.
Right.
What's the point of reading them when they're in a book?
Right.
Anyway, so we got to finish up. We'll have to continue about the books that we read.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've read some great books over the years. There was a part of my life where I only read the great authors, Dostoevsky and Nabokov, Russian writers, and that were staples in literature courses, and then,
did you think that those writers did they stand up to the hype?
Well, first of all, they probably were translated from the original Russian. But they were great. I like reading stuff about the early years and in communist Russia and European theme types of books. During the times, between World War I and World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The history is very intriguing, and so on and so forth. Anyway, we're getting signal that we have to end this segment, Malky.
Okay.
So this is the conclusion of Father Daughter, which is a weekly podcast that is really becoming very popular very fast, just as we anticipated. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, our first one that we put up a few weeks ago, has like over 10,000 views.
Not too shabby.
That's 10,000 is very, 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 very impressive. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.